Hello and welcome to another Arsecast Extra, as always, with James from Gunnerblog. James, good morning to you.
Morning, Andrew. How's it going?
It's going all right. It's going all right. Feels like sort of an interlull, doesn't it? But it's not.
It is for us.
Yeah, I guess.
But it does have that feel to it. I mean, yeah, it's weird. It's spooky almost. It's actually quite nice, to be honest. I have to say. We both love football. We love watching Arsenal play. Yeah. But sometimes a little bit of respite is all right as well.
Yeah, I think so. It's been pretty full on and intense, hasn't it, for the last 6 weeks, maybe a bit more, pre-Christmas. And then over January, it was like, whoa, non-stop. So the little break is good, but I sort of, find myself a little bit, at a loose end. Is that the right way to put it? Not quite.
Yeah,
quite
that's
sure
right.
what's going on.
That's right.
Yeah.
Have you paid any attention to the FA Cup?
No, not really. I was at a family thing yesterday with my brother and other members of the family, and he was like, "Oh, Plymouth are winning 1-0," and then he was like, "Oh, Plymouth won 1-0." I was like, "Oh, that's not what I was expecting," but I didn't care one way or the other. After it was like, "Oh, they Liverpool got beaten. You couldn't save it for the league. Fuck off." That's kind of the way I felt about it,
Yeah, heavily rotated team. I'm fascinated by the Plymouth manager. Have you seen any clips of the Plymouth manager? His name's Miron Muslic.
No.
I don't know exactly where he's from, so I'm going to Google. He's a Bosnian manager.
Right.
I think he shares an agent with a guy called Benjamin Sesko, who you may have heard of.
I think I have, yeah.
He basically has the vibe of like, he's an immaculately dressed motivational speaker. It's sort of worth seeking out his like opening address. When he got the Plymouth job, they put his opening address on Instagram.
Right.
And footage of his post-game team talk has emerged as well. He's sort of very softly spoken, kind of inspirational character. And yeah, I sort of was like, when he got the gig, I was like, I saw his opening remarks and was like, I mean, this is great. He's walked the walk, but presumably that's kind of it, like it doesn't actually go anywhere. But actually they've picked up a couple of results and beat Liverpool. So yeah, I'm curious to see how his story ends. My brother described him as like a bit like a barber. Like he's sort of the guy that you would chat to about any of your life problems.
Right.
But I have no idea if he's any good at tactics.
I just Googled him and then a story came up. Plymouth manager Miron Muslic's reaction to defender Nikola Katic losing his tooth mid-game. And there's a picture of a guy lying on his back, obviously in pain because his tooth has got knocked out. And then underneath that, a picture of the Plymouth manager laughing his head off.
Yeah, okay. I mean, the players seem to like him, but then when Wayne Rooney's been your manager, I guess this sort of sophisticated, handsome man strolling in, you are going to be beguiled.
Yes, I guess so. Well, look, what a big result. What a big result for them. Who do they play
aside from that? I don't know. I don't know if the draw's happened yet.
Right.
Has the draw happened? I couldn't give two hoots, Andrew. Now we're out of it, really.
Yeah. I stopped caring. I stopped caring a couple of weeks ago. When is the FA Cup fifth round draw? Blah, blah, blah.
Who cares? I mean, Spurs went out. There's that.
Yeah.
Ange looked very sad afterwards. Very sad.
Oh, no, mate.
Yeah, it was literally. I feel like he's gone entirely grey. Like his hair, his beard, his skin, his soul are all kind of the same hue of grey at this point in time.
That club will do that to you, I think.
I know. I feel for him almost. Trying to think if there's anything else of note, really.
From the FA Cup?
Chelsea went out.
Oh, yeah. Good.
United nearly went out. They were 1-0 down at home to Leicester for a very long time. It was very funny, but I gather they turned it round.
They got an offside goal, I believe. There's no VAR at this point of the competition. So they got an offside goal to win it. I saw that. That was like Friday night when I was sort of half paying attention to anything that was going on in the
good
world.
old days are back, I suppose. In a pre-VAR era, United could just get any decision they wanted.
I mean, the upside of that, of course, is that Ruud van Nistelrooy is sad. Not only sad at, Leicester losing again. Isn't it fucking hilarious that Leicester have just been absolutely shit since he took over? And we're reveling in that, but the one game they won was against Tottenham.
I know, they nearly beat United. Yeah, he's having a terrible time at Leicester, and, that's fine with me.
Me too.
So I'm sorry to the people of Leicester, but karma's got to catch up with Ruud van Nistelrooy eventually.
Listen, the people of Leicester can go fuck themselves. I don't care about them.
Yeah, and the people of Stoke as well.
Yeah, definitely. That was some good stuff, wasn't it? Aaron Ramsey baiting the Stoke fans, loving it. They haven't forgiven him since.
No. But yeah, that makes it sound like I'm actually fully clued up. I've just sort of seen the big scorelines come in, really. I was really happy because I turned the Liverpool game on and it was 1-0 in the 97th minute. And I got to see which must have been the most entertaining 60 seconds of the game, which was Liverpool having a free kick and a corner in the final minute of injury time to try and equalise. Goalie up for both instances. And I was like, this is the kind of football
That's what you want. That's what
Kelleher got his head on the last corner.
No way.
Yeah, but headed it straight at the goalie. It wasn't a terrible header.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's been it. But football-wise, it's quite an odd weekend for us.
Yeah, nothing doing. Did you pay any attention to the Super Bowl?
No. Well, actually, that's not true. My son woke up in the night unhappy, and so I had to get up and sort of settle him, and that meant that I tuned in basically just before half time and sort of was aware what was going on. But I say aware what was going on, I mean in the loosest possible terms.
Sure. I mean, it's a big day for our friends in Philadelphia.
Yeah, very happy for them.
Yeah, we've got some pals out there and spent some time there this summer. It was great. So they won, and congratulations to them, and commiserations to our friends in Kansas City, if we have any friends there. I know there's a big Arsenal group there. So commiserations to you guys for not winning. But of course, the big loser on the night was not Kansas City. It was Drake. So no commiserations to that guy.
I'm looking forward to watching that.
I watched a bit of it this morning. It looked interesting, that's for sure.
And I guess the moral of the story here is if you welcome us into your city, you will win the Super Bowl the following year.
So yeah, make your pitches, guys.
Start your bidding, America.
Make your pitches. Yeah, we'll see. I don't really know a great deal about American football at all. So it was, no.
But still, go Birds, as I believe they say.
I mean, are they not? Is it the Eagles? No.
Yeah, yeah, and you think it would be Go Eagles?
Yeah,
but turns out predominantly people say Go Birds.
I mean, that's all encompassing. Sort of
it's inclusive.
Yeah, exactly.
And I like that.
All birds, even emus, ostriches.
We are eagles, but we welcome birds of every creed.
Exactly. Even the ones that can't fly. You're our brothers too. The extinct ones. Go dodos.
Go dodos.
Yeah.
Go pigeons. Go whatever you want.
Yeah, fuck no, pigeons. No. Sorry. Not having that. Pigeons don't like me, so I reciprocate,
How could you tell?
Well, every time I go anywhere where there's pigeons, they land near me and flap up in my face.
Sounds like they like you a lot, Andrew.
I don't think so. It doesn't feel friendly to me.
Okay.
It doesn't feel friendly, so. Those birds, I'm not on board with. So look, Arsenal are, as we speak, in Dubai. They're having a nice time in the sunshine.
Good for them.
Yeah, it's fucking pissing rain here and cold. So
the
I'm
Athletics
slightly jealous.
They sort of said, would there be any merit in you going to Dubai? And I was like...
Yeah.
Yeah. I looked out the window like you. I was like, yeah, I think that'd be good.
Yeah.
But I sort of floated the idea with a couple of people at Arsenal, and let's just say I don't think it would have been a popular decision if I had appeared at the team hotel. Mikel, you'll never guess what. It's like a sort of the start of a terrible comedy movie. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like two guys who just don't get along on holiday in Dubai together. So I didn't go.
Well, I mean, you saved the editor, James. I need 1,200 words on Ben White doing some shuttle runs. You know?
Listen, I've done worse. He was never going to miss it, Ben White. I know it's kind of newsworthy when he joined the group, but come on, guys.
Yeah.
Think about it.
He's not there for the training. He's there for the tan.
He's got to get the tan before his comeback.
Yeah. You got to have those golden thighs, the right shade before you start doing your bits on the pitch again. But look, I saw him there. I saw him sort of relaxing, having a chat with Miles Lewis-Skelly. So, you know, if it enables...
changing shit-housing ideas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, have you thought about doing this?
Next time you see Haaland, how about this? And Bukayo Saka as well among the group.
Yes, that was good to see. You know, how involved he is. We'll obviously have to wait and see, and how far away he is from a comeback, we don't know yet. I don't think it's anytime soon, but encouraging that he's there, I guess.
And I imagine a real boost for him, you know, having been on the sidelines. I know he's been around the team a little bit more at the games and at the stadium, but I think good to have him out there, especially seeing as we haven't got any other players. That was kind of the big news, right? Was
Martinelli.
David Ornstein's story about Gabriel Martinelli. The wording at least 4 weeks, which I don't think is the most reassuring wording that you can have for an interview.
No, I looked at that and was like, did someone just say don't... go too big on this one, David? You've got the info, you've got the story, fair play, but just do us a solid and don't tell them it's going to be actually 4 months. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, obviously...
I don't think it will be.
No, I know.
I think probably 4 weeks is fair in terms of medically being healed, but any sort of muscular injury to resume competition, a lot of the time you're looking at 6, aren't you? So... It wouldn't surprise me if it's more like 6 than 4. That's certainly what I'm sort of projecting in my mind.
Oh, projecting. I thought you were going to say, that's what I'm hearing from my very well-informed sources.
Well, a little bit of that as well.
A little
but
bit
if I don't want anyone to think, oh, he's out for the rest of the season or anything like that. That's not the case. I think he will be back.
It's just most of the season. Just most of the rest of the season.
Just a lot of the important bit.
Yeah.
He'll be back.
He'll be back for the Newcastle game at the end of May, I think.
I think he'll be in contention for Southampton on the final day. Let's put it like that. No, I think he'll be back, after the March international break probably. But yeah, it's I don't know why we're laughing because it's a big blow. I guess gallows humour, isn't it?
What else can you do? What else
Buy
is there?
A forward?
That window is gone.
Yeah.
That window. I mean, it does feel so typical, doesn't it? That, we went through January. There is the opportunity to bring somebody in. Mikel Arteta talked, before the Newcastle game, like, what's the strategy for your forwards now? And I think he said, well, the first thing is to keep them all fit. And then 20 minutes into the game against Newcastle the other night, Martinelli does his hamstring. So obviously it's Arteta's fault for saying it out loud. Just don't say anything. But it does feel absolutely typical of this season and, the way things have gone and maybe the way we have, I don't know, I don't want to say we brought it upon ourselves, but you could have predicted this. I'm not saying you couldn't have predicted this. You absolutely could have predicted this. And I think most people probably did in their minds when the window closed, probably said, what'll happen now? Some fucker will get injured and it'll be worse than it was before. And lo and behold, that is the case.
Yeah, I think we've described it as a gamble. a big gamble on Arsenal's part with the fitness of their attacking players. I think primarily I was almost maybe too guilty of looking at Kai Havertz and thinking, he's the one, and he's the one I was most worried about. He probably is still the one I'm most worried about. But yeah, the Martinelli one kind of not comes out of nowhere, because I think when you've got players playing a lot of games, it increases the risk, doesn't it?
Honestly, when you say gamble, it's like I've just this picture in my mind of Arsenal going to a casino, to the roulette table.
Yeah. And
instead of betting on black or red, they stick the house on yellow.
Yeah.
There is no yellow.
Yeah. It's a real blow. But let's just hope Dubai works its magic on Raheem Sterling.
Yeah.
And he returns 15 years younger.
That would be amazing. Arsenal at the blackjack table, king, ace, stick or twist. Twist. Hit me. Yeah. Give me another card. No, stop.
So that's it sort of makes at least it makes Mikel Arteta's selection decisions quite easy.
Well, yeah, I guess. What are we having for tea? What's in the cupboard? Just baked beans. Okay, baked beans.
Because it's basically Trossard, Havertz and Ranieri, isn't it?
Yes.
It
picks itself. It picks
itself. Managers are always talking about selection headaches.
Nah, none of those.
Gloriously free of headaches right now, Mikel Arteta.
Yeah. There is a question, I suppose, or a discussion to be had about, how or what we might do. Because I think he also said before the Newcastle game, at some point we're going to have to try something different in attack, is what Arteta said. He is going to have to try something different. What can he do? What can he try? What options does he have available to him? Because, jokes aside about Raheem Sterling coming back 15 years younger, and that would be amazing.
He'd be 14, so it would actually be...
He'd be maxed down.
It'd be a disaster. He'd be ineligible for the competition.
That'd be just our luck. He came back 15 years younger, just 1 year too young to play in the first team. Yeah. Damn it. Can he come back 10 years younger? But what can he do, or what is he going to be thinking about how he... It's not so much what he picks from the start, because as we said, that picks itself. He's only got 3 players available to him. And then Raheem Sterling on the bench, who hasn't really demonstrated an ability to influence games. It's fair to say.
That is fair.
So when we get to a point in a game and we need to change something, we need to do something, we need to find a goal from somewhere, he's going to have to pick a left back and make them do something not left backy. Does that make sense?
Yeah. He's got the front 3 he used against Girona, right? Which is, he played sort of Trossard through the middle with Sterling on the left and Ranieri to the right. He's got that. And I'd be surprised if we don't see that at some point in time. Even if it's just like in the last 20 minutes of a game or something, when it's well beyond us. Alternatively, what else has he done? We had a question. Do you mind if I reference a question?
Of course, we might as well, because this is essentially an Interlull Arsecast extra, so we can pepper the questions through rather than just in
so
part
Ben
2.
Stewart, who's a Ben Stewart film on Blue Sky, said, "Morning, guys. If you could repurpose players from our back line and defensive midfielders into left wing, right wing and centre forward, who would you pick?" For me, I'd go with 3 left footers, with Tierney whipping in crosses from the left, big Gabby knocking them in, and Calafiori cutting inside for screamers from right wing. Not bad.
This is going to sound absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I can sort of see the Calafiori thing in my mind. I can sort of see it because of the kind of player he is. Tierney on the left wing, banging them in, sure. You could definitely play him ahead of Lewis Skelly or Calafiori if he's at left back, or even Zinchenko at left back.
Yeah. Calafiori's played right back for us as well, hasn't he, in little stints?
Yeah.
So I could see that him him coming in from that side.
I mean,
he's got an eye for goal.
Yeah, he does. He can finish for sure. I mean, is there an argument maybe that, Calafiori at left back and you bring Lewis Skelly forward a bit as a potential option is not beyond the realms of possibility as a way of sort of tweaking your team? Maybe you play with a front two, for example. You play with, let's say, Trossard and Havertz up front, right? So you basically play a 4-4-2, and on the left wing you could have Tierney ahead of Calafiori or Lewis Skelly or somebody like that.
Right, yeah. Well, we saw a bit of that, didn't we? A full kind of 4-4-2-ish system earlier in the season. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, Gabriel up front is something I would like to see that. Like in the same way that it gave me joy to see that goalkeeper up. 90 minutes of Gabriel in the opposition penalty area causing havoc.
Yeah,
I'd love it. I mean, I miss the days when Premier League managers would sort of solve injury crisis up front by putting the big centre half up there.
The sort of Dion Dublin, Paul Warhurst solution.
Sure. Or later, kind of Matt Elliott or Chris Samba. Do you remember that spell when Chris Samba played up front for Blackburn? And
everyone wanted us to sign Chris Samba. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Well, he was very big. We were very small. The science of recruitment. Yeah. Wenger was a genius. Yeah. It didn't happen in the end.
He did. He's got some footwork, though, Gabriel. There was it the last game? Was it maybe the Man City game? Where he did like a kind of step over, flappy drag, wiggle waggle into the box over on the right hand. So that's the technical term. I think that's what the move is called on FIFA.
Yeah. Somebody told me he did start as a striker. I mean, they all
do. Come on. Everyone does.
They've all got a story.
Yeah.
I was a striker once. Okay, Raheem. Sit down.
Try be one now.
Yeah.
Channel that.
Yeah, we remember 2017. Around that kind of period, you were good. Yeah. Is there anything weird or creative Mikel can do?
Not really.
We saw him play Emile and Willian as false nines. Do you know what I mean? Like, is he going to pull something equally?
Potentially. I mean, look, we've got what we've got.
Marino.
Yeah, Marino, is... listen, nothing would surprise me because I wouldn't be surprised if we got more injuries as well. But with the front three that we have, at least with Trossard, Havertz, Nwaneri, we do have a front three that's decent. There's no... For now.
Yeah.
That's decent for now. But it is, what we do aside from that or in place of that, or if we need to give somebody a rest or if somebody else picks up a problem, then, we're a bit...
I've got another question, Andrew.
Fucked. Yeah, go on. Go on.
The question was about... Well, it was sort of about if there are any academy players. Here you go. James Bissett. With the current lack of attacking squad depth, are there any of the under-21s that can step up until the end of the season?
There's a good question. So,
not Ethan and Miles, he says, obviously.
Of course. I mean, there are some sort of bubbling under, aren't they? But they're not really pushing hard for first-team inclusion. I do wonder if, when he does come to pick his squad for the next game, that in the absence of Martinelli, leaving him with just one nominal attacking change on the bench in Raheem Sterling, we're assuming Sterling will be on the bench with the other three starting. Does he have to actually just bite the bullet and say, okay, one of my left backs is going to have to sit this one out, and I have to include, or maybe he doesn't even have to leave a left back out now because Martinelli's gone. He can just replace Martinelli, I suppose. But does he have to include, like, let's say, one of Nathan Butler, Oyedeji, Ismail Kabia, I don't know how you pronounce the surname, Charles Sago Jr., who's there. I know he had a pretty unsuccessful loan spell in the first half of the season, so it doesn't necessarily augur well for his ability to do something at this level. But in the absence of anything else, is one of those guys going to have to get a go on the bench just as a kind of, well, fuck it, we've got nothing else, so we might as well give it a lash?
Maybe. I mean...
Well, who else is there? Like, if you're picking your... what was our last game was against Newcastle, right? So, how do you fill the Martinelli-shaped hole in the squad?
Yeah. Well, I know that we're sort of taking quite a jokey tone with some of the repurposing of players, but my hunch is that Arteta would rather do that than use some of these kids. That's just the way I see it. Like, I was joking about Mourinho up front, but I think if Arteta had to do it, he'd probably do that before bringing on Nathan Butler-Oyedeji in a Premier League game. I just think with this group of young players that we have in the academy, and I think it's why the academy question is not sort of, as much as Ethan and Miles have been amazing and a real testament to the work that's done there, I don't think we should kid ourselves that there's a ton of kids like that waiting to break through. And actually, I mean, I'm always wary of talking about players who are so young, but we are at the point where if 15-year-old Max Dowman was actually eligible to be involved, I think he'd be pretty close to it at this point in time, just by virtue of the fact there's nobody there.
Yeah.
And I think often, actually, in recent weeks, of someone like Chido Obi-Martin, who left the academy to go to Manchester United. But frankly, if he was at Arsenal, I mean, there's no doubt he'd be on the substitutes bench at this point in time.
Yeah.
So, in terms of the ones who are there, yeah, Kabia, Butler-Oyedeji.
They're the two. They're the only two, I think, that have a chance.
Maybe Sago Jr., as you say, just because he's been involved before.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, those three, I mean, Butler-Oyedeji is 22 now, so he's not a kid. He's been in the academy for quite a while. And, I think if you get to 22 and you're still sort of playing under 21s football, you haven't really been out on loan anywhere. I mean, he did go, where did he go? Someone like Accrington Stanley, I think. Yeah,
it was last year. It was at Accrington Stanley in League 2, 11 games, no goals. Cheltenham Town in the National League, so below League 2 this year, 13 appearances, no goals.
Yeah.
So it's not the most. He's not sort of performed in a way that makes you think he's going to come back and have an impact. In fact, I think the club were pretty close to releasing him in the most recent transfer window. I think ultimately they didn't, simply because of the numbers.
Yeah. So maybe Kabia, because he's 19, maybe is the one that you might look at and say, okay, let's not sink or swim, but let's see what he can do at this level. Maybe as a Hail Mary option in a game, just to be on the bench. But, they've got to pick some kid. Like, there's no point putting two goalkeepers on the bench just to fill up the numbers. You might as well just have one of those guys on there.
Yeah, I mean, he's a winger, Kabia. Can play either side. I think usually plays from the left. So, in terms of sort of Martinelli's spot in the squad, I guess he's the most likely.
Yeah.
But I maybe I'll be proven wrong on this, but I think we'd see Kieran Tierney there before Kabia,
Oh, yeah, like put Tierney on the left-hand side or... Yeah.
I think there is a distinction between Ethan Miles and a lot of these other academy players at this point in time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not a great picture.
No.
How does it... Here's a question. This comes from James from Gunnerblog.
Okay.
He sends them in every week, and they
never fucking answers. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought we'll squeeze one in.
All right.
His question. Hi guys, love the show.
Big fan.
Yeah, big fan. Reflects a lot of my own views as a supporter. Do you? Hang on, it's sort of not very clear what he's written. So how does Martinelli's injury change how you feel about the remainder of the season and our prospects? Cheers, guys. Hope you enjoyed the question. Lots of love. Let's do this. Fuck Magpies forever. I heart James.
How does it make me feel? Good question.
Yeah,
well thought out, I have to say.
He seems like he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, seems like a good guy, that fella. Surprised we haven't got one of his questions before.
Listen, there's a lot of questions.
There's a lot of questions. How does it make me feel? I think, it makes this next little period even more challenging. I know in terms of the schedule, it's not as testing as it was in July or in January. In January, with a lot of games in January. I think now,
but when you go out all the cups, that it does help. That
Jesus. But we've got. I'm just looking at the fixtures.
What have we got? Leicester away,
then West Ham at home, then Nottingham Forest away, then Manchester United away, and then Chelsea at home, and then there is an interlull, which takes us through to the 1st of April, after which we start again against Fulham. So we've got 5 games.
Well, we also have the Champions League in that period. Is that right? The last 16?
Oh, has that been...
I'm pretty sure.
Let me have a look.
4th of March. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. I'm sure it's either side of the
because we haven't
United game. We don't know who we face.
We don't know who we're facing. That's it. So that's why it's not on the fixture lists. Okay.
Yeah, well, I seem to remember there's like a fortnight in which we've got United, Chelsea, and a Champions League knockout.
Right. Well, yeah, it doesn't make me feel a lot better about it. That's for sure.
Great. Thanks for the question, James.
Yeah. Cheers, James.
No, I mean, yeah. It's not great, is it?
No.
But I wondered, does it make you think? Are you at the point where you're like, well, that'll be the league then? That'll be that gone? Or are you like, well, let's stay in it. There's a chance,
Yeah, so you're telling me there's a chance? I'm a bit in that mode. So you're telling me there's a chance.
Okay, sure.
But I realize...
That is the want of the supporter, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. But that is I understand that comes from a film called Dumb and Dumber, and that reflects on me. I completely get that. Yeah. But look, I can't.
If Liverpool, I've been saying for a while that if Liverpool win the Merseyside derby, and win that is their game in hand, right? And they go 9 clear.
I think we said a couple of weeks ago we thought that was that in terms of
I guess until it's mathematically gone, there is always that part of you that's like, well, they could just completely forget how to win football matches.
Yeah.
They could just lose all their powers overnight, like in Space Jam. But I'm starting to look. What I'm doing actually is I'm sort of starting to stroke my chin and really look at the Champions League and be like, but isn't that the real competition? Do you know what I mean?
That's the one we really
it's gone up in my estimation. I mean, it's massive, but I'm sort of looking at that maybe more so than the league at this point in time.
Yeah, I mean, it's both of them are very, very difficult. I think what worries me, I guess, is the sort of fatigue element, because we only have these 3 players and Sterling for the forward positions. There's a big, big onus on those guys to deliver, to stay fit, to find form. I know there's more to it than that, and obviously what happens behind them is very important as well. But I do just worry that we're going to ask too much of them, and inevitably somebody will fall by the wayside, and then I think we're completely fucked. Yeah. But look, who knows? Maybe the gods will smile on us for once. I don't know whose fucking chips we pissed on at the start of this season, but give us a break at this point, please.
Yeah, it's a tough one. And I think the positive spin is, we'll get Martinelli and Saka back at a similar time frame. What a boost that will be.
I mean, it will.
But I think it will be. But also, look at Martin Odegaard's season. We don't necessarily know. There's no precedent really for Bukayo Saka coming back from an absence of this length. We don't know. I mean, he's outstanding, so I imagine he'll be brilliant. But there is a chance that there is a period of reacclimatization to the level,
Yeah, all we need to do is just play him for 90 plus minutes, game after game after game, just to get him back into the swing of things,
Yeah. Well, he'll be probably playing left back because Tierney will be up front by that point. All the other left backs will be playing in the front three.
Yeah.
So, but what's good is he'll step in to solve the left back crisis.
Good man. What about this question? This comes from Dutchman Ben 80. Who's at dutchmanben80.bsky.social. He says, what do you make of Tomiyasu's absence from Dubai? Love the player, yet we don't get many updates about his injury or his readiness.
When I was a kid, there was a cartoon called Where on Earth is Carmen Sandiego? I don't know if you remember it.
I don't.
It had a great theme tune. It's Where on Earth... It's Carmen Sandiego. Carmen Sandiego. And I'm going to repurpose it with Takehiro Tomiyasu because I don't know. I imagine Japan, but I don't know.
I saw him on the bench recently. He was sitting there. I think it might have been...
Okay.
Was Saliba out for a game recently?
Yes, I think so.
Was it? I can't remember. Whether it was injury or suspension or something. But I think I saw him sitting beside William Saliba. I'm a little bit surprised that he isn't in Dubai because if Saka is there and Saka's not nearly ready, and Martinelli is there and he's going to be gone for a month, it does make me worry a little bit that there's something going on with Tomiyasu in terms of the injury or maybe the kind of headspace he's in at this moment in time. I feel really, really bad for him, I have to say. I know sometimes when his name gets mentioned, you see people go, fucking waste of space and this, that, and the other. I just feel really, really sorry for him because without the injuries, I think we would be talking about Tomiyasu as like a real gem of a transfer that Arsenal uncovered this like brilliant player, and I think he is a brilliant player who can play all across the back line, right back, left back, both centre-half positions to a really high level. We got him for a fucking steal. What was it, 15 million, 16 million, something like that?
Yeah, on a deadline day as well.
And it was like, I think in another universe, we're talking about Tomiyasu as one of the smartest signings that we've made in recent times, but obviously that's not the case, and he's suffering with injury and he can't help that. I don't think there's any question that he's anything other than super professional and dedicated, and whenever Arteta talks about him, he talks about him with a real sense of regret that he doesn't have him available to him, but also because I think he knows how much he works and what a dedicated professional he is. But, if you're not available, people forget about you very quickly. So it's a sad one for me, I have to say.
It is, in seriousness, a real shame. And Arsenal have been very guarded, haven't they, about what exactly is going on with Tomiyasu. Part of the cynic in me is like, is that partly about trying to protect his value? Although it's difficult to achieve that when the player's just not involved. I hope. I had heard that Saka, they have a return plan in mind, and Ben White they see as not that far away. But Tomiyasu, I've heard nothing to suggest that he's close to coming back, which is obviously a concern.
Yeah.
I knew it was long term. I'm trying to think, when was he actually last available?
He came on in a game, came on for like the last few minutes of a game early in the season. It could have been against Leicester, maybe, I think.
Okay.
Quick
look now.
Maybe not Leicester, but it was one of the home games. He came on right towards the end. Maybe Southampton?
Yeah, it's Southampton. It was Southampton.
And he came on with like 5 minutes to go. And in that time, he aggravated whatever has kept him out since. I don't know what it is. It's a knee thing, as far as I understand, or as far as I know.
He had been out with a knee injury prior to that. He played 6 minutes, and then he's been gone since then. So gone since October. Yeah, I mean, maybe it's maybe it's a 9-month.
Yeah, could be. I mean, it feels a bit like. Remember when El Neni did his ACL?
Yeah.
And Arsenal said, because normally they would confirm that injury, but they didn't when it came to El Neni. They just said he suffered a knee injury, a serious knee injury or whatever it was. They didn't go into the details of it. And in this case, maybe they're just keeping that under their hats. But it would make sense if it was something like that, wouldn't it? Because, he's not close to a return as far as we know. I think if he was close, or if he was rehabbing and making his way back, he would be out in Dubai, as part of that process. He doesn't have to go full tilt in training, but I guess just sort of being part of the group would be, significant for him in terms of his own rehabilitation and recovery from that. The fact that he's not suggests... he's a long way from reaching that point, which is
and the
a
mental
real shame.
side as well.
That's it.
He's been back to Japan in this period and spent time at home. The club sort of gave him leave to do that. I think again to help him sort of cope with the immense frustration he must feel. But yeah, I wish him all the best. I mean, the fact is, it is frustrating not having him, but we have sort of constructed a squad in that part of the pitch which kind of functions independently of him at this point in time. Sure. He was bought as a right back. Well, we bought Ben White the same summer, and we've bought Jurrien Timber since. Left back, I mean, we're making jokes about how many we've got. Centre half, he's missed, I think, more so, but we're managing. I mean, we still, we have Timber, we have Calafiori, we have Ben White again, who can play at centre half. But I think what he does or would give you is just that extra depth, where certain games you can sit Gabriel down, or you can sit Saliba down, or you can sit both of them down, if need be, So tough one. I'm just trying to think. He signed a contract, didn't he?
Was it sort of a short-term extension, wasn't it?
Yeah, so it was in March last year, which took him through to 2026.
So that's next summer, isn't it?
Arsenal like an option, don't they? So it may be that there's an additional year sort of on the back of that. But yeah, I think it's at the point when a player's missed so much football that when they do get back to fitness, I don't know if it's going to be particularly satisfying for them to be third or fourth choice, I think when you've not played for a season and a half or whatever it is, it feels like a long time with Tomiyasu collectively, then you do get back to fitness, you want to go and play somewhere. So I'm not sure about his long-term prospects, but I'd be happy enough just seeing him on a pitch again, really.
Well, fingers crossed he's back to score the winner in the Champions League final against Barcelona. That'd be great. That would be great. Just to round out part one, what do you hope that they take from this Dubai trip more than anything else? I mean, I know we sort of have a laugh about it and talk, Dubai will be the thing that sparks them into life, but do you think there is like a serious reason for this in terms of decompressing and maybe just sort of turning over a page and focusing on what's to come between now and the end of the season?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, for the players, I just wish them an opportunity to rest, relax, and recuperate, physically and mentally, from what's been a really taxing period. I'm not sending them out there hoping, they better be drilling the defensive line or attacking pattern shapes. Sure. I think they need respite. So that's what I hope it offers them. And a sort of an opportunity to kind of clear the head of some of the things that have happened in recent weeks and months, and and maybe some perspective as well. You know, a bit of perspective about the journey they've been on, even though there may be frustrations about this year, like a bigger picture about where the club is now as compared to where it was just a few years ago. I think that's what will stand them in the best stead, because I think it's been quite an exhausting campaign for us as supporters. So I can only imagine what it's been like for the players.
Yeah. Hopefully they can recharge and come back and just win a load of games of football and take us through to the interlull and see what happens.
Just win the Champions League.
Win the league and the Champions League. You know, it's not complicated.
Hope, yeah. It enables them to win the Premier League and the Champions League.
Yeah.
Then it will have been justified.
But nothing less than that.
Nothing less. We'll be on the streets with placards.
Pitchforks and all that. Down with this sort of thing. That kind of vibe. Okay, will we take a break?
Let's take a break, Andrew. And do you know what we should do?
What?
We should come back with their questions.
And more.
And more. Right after
this.
Very good.
Welcome back to part 2 of the Arsecast Extra. This is the bit where I forget the thing that I say, but we do the question stuff on the blue sky and
if
Discord.
There's been a competition, we'll do that now usually.
There hasn't been.
Oh, there hasn't been.
No, there hasn't been. There isn't one. I'm sorry. We got nothing to give you today but our time and our best efforts.
Charity. Sometimes we want money for charity, and we'll mention that now. I'm laying bare the format, Andrew. It's like a behind-the-scenes tour of the Arsenal.
It's an expose. You've torn down the fourth wall, and everybody's getting a look in behind.
Exactly.
Anyway, this is the question bit of the show. We had quite a few questions like this, and I know we had a good laugh at certain things in part 1. So let's get this off to a cheery start. In part 2, because we had loads of questions about William Saliba. Jake HL97 says, "Good morning, lads. Is Saliba leaving a ticking clock? Unless you start collecting trophies next year, will he be lured by Real Madrid?" Because there were stories over the weekend about how Real Madrid want William Saliba. And then John Larkin, also on the Discord, he said, "This summer there's a few important players hitting the 2-year remaining mark on their contracts. Apart from Gabriel, we've heard very little about the ongoing renewal for Saka, Martinelli and Saliba. Would you be worried that the uncertainty around the director of football role could end up with the club taking their eye off the ball when it comes to these renewals?"
Big topic. The short answer is I would be a little bit worried. Only because, and funnily enough, I'm due to write about this week. So spoiler alert.
After 1,200 words on Ben White's shuttle runs.
Yeah, priorities. But if you look at Liverpool, they've got themselves into a bit of a pickle contractually with a number of their star players. And part of the reasoning for that, as far as I understand it, is that they had big turnover in terms of sporting director, manager, key figures, key personnel at the club leaving. And that created a bit of kind of an impasse in some of these situations. So I do worry about that prospect. I suspect that the bigger factor might be the fact that we've just been in the January transfer window, and I suspect the club has been focused on...
Don't say it!
Yeah, you know what I'm going to say.
We know it's not true.
I suspect that's been, the distraction. But it is something that needs to be attended to. And the Saliba one in particular is the one that, I'm not going to say keeps me up at night, but it's in my brain in the sort of moments just before I fall asleep.
Right.
Right. Because what's he got? 2 years. I remember when he signed that contract, and there was a lot of debate about the length of it, because it was just 4 years. And, you like to, Erling Haaland signed a 9.5-year contract the other day.
Yeah.
Although I think he owns a country at the end of it, as far as I'm aware. But Saliba's contract, like Bukayo Saka's, was in the sort of, in terms of the modern Premier League, relatively short. And everybody said, well, in 2 years' time, we're going to just be in this position again. And guess what, guys? Here we are in that position again.
Well, I mean, he was a year out when he signed his last contract. So he was a year from
That's true.
the end. So,
so it's not quite as
not
much jeopardy.
quite, but obviously there is that idea, isn't there, that you have to get it done with 2 years to go. I mean, that is ideal. That is the ideal scenario, but it's not necessarily a copper.
Always happens.
It doesn't mean it's the rule, and that's the only way it can be done. You can, get much closer. I remember it was Theo Walcott, wasn't it, who was into the last 6 months of his contract before he signed a new deal back in the day to make him the club's, I think, highest paid player at the time. So it can be done, but obviously it's far from ideal. And like you say, Liverpool have got that going on at the moment with Trent Alexander-Arnold and Mo Salah. Salah's a slightly different situation because of the age, whereas it looks, from the outside, having no insight into this at all, it does look as if, there's been some back channel stuff going on between Trent and Real Madrid for a while.
Yeah, it looks like that, doesn't it? I mean, French Arsenal player linked with Real Madrid, I mean, that's Arsenal heritage, right?
It's also a consequence of, having some of the best players in the world is the big clubs want those players. That is just kind of how it works,
I suppose what I would say, without wishing to sort of set the cat among the pigeons or panic anyone, and this is again devoid of intel, but just my opinion, if you were looking at the big names at Arsenal, so I'd say like Saka, Odegaard, Rice, Saliba, maybe they're like the big four. I know you've got your Havertz and your Gabriel or whatever. If you said one of those players will prove difficult to keep, I've always kind of suspected Saliba would be top of that list. I don't know. Do you share that feeling?
Yeah, a little bit. He's one of the best central defenders in the world. Real Madrid is one of the biggest clubs in the world. It would be perfectly understandable if that was an attractive proposition to him. But I don't, at the same time, think it is a done deal or a sure thing or anything like that. I think if Arsenal are competitive, remain competitive, and, provide the opportunity for these players to win trophies, as we said often, then I think you've got a really good chance of keeping William Saliba. I mean, what age is Saliba now? 23? He's 23.
Might be older than that, actually.
Might be a bit old. He'll be 24 in March. So,
Past it.
Yeah, past it. 24 in March, he could stay at Arsenal another 2-3 years, move to Real Madrid at 26 in his prime, and we still get that amount of time out of it. I don't know. It's a difficult one. It is a difficult one. And I do think this is where that person operating at the top of the club from a sporting perspective, whether you want to call them the sporting director, the football director, director of football, whatever, that person needs to be really, really good at their job. Not just for recruitment reasons, but for retention reasons as well. And I think whatever else you might say about Edu, I think in the period where he was sporting director, we were good at keeping our best players. We renewed Gabriel, we renewed Martinelli, we renewed Saka, Saliba, Odegaard. And the next guy, whoever that is, has got to come in and be just as good in that sense.
Agreed.
Or if there are roadblocks or stumbling blocks along the way, they have to maximize that situation for the benefit of the club. So if, and this is a pure hypothetical, they sit down with Saliba and he and his camp are like, I'm happy to stay for the next 2 years of my contract, and I'll give 100% to Arsenal in every game I play. And I'd have no doubt that would be the case. That's a situation we have to manage. Maybe we have to bite the bullet and say, well, if you're not going to sign a new deal and Real Madrid are interested and they're willing to put the money down, then, you know, we have to go in different directions, because ultimately that money, as terrible as it would be to lose Saliba, because I love him and I think he's an amazing player, maybe that's the strategy you have to take, you know? So a bit decisive, even if it hurts you in what feels like the short term. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, look, this sporting director appointment, I think, is really important. And it's also important what Arsenal decide they want the role to be. You know, is this someone who's going to challenge the manager and have a genuine authority on these big strategic issues, or not? And I think that really is important as well. On Saliba, let's say we hired a new sporting director, guy comes in, takes the job. If Saliba sort of indicated he wasn't going to sign a new contract or dragged his feet with negotiations, and they then sold him this summer for 100 million, it might be a deeply unpopular move, but it would probably be the right one. And on a personal level, I don't want to lose Saliba at all. I really hope he stays, really hope he signs a new contract. But on a personal level, I'd be quite impressed, I think, if someone had the balls, basically, to say, well, this could become a really problematic situation for us, and one where we stand to lose an awful lot of money, and lose a player without replacement. I'm going to take, control of it. The counterpoint there is, I suspect Mikel Arteta would say, well, I need to win a trophy, and I'd rather have William Saliba here.
Yeah.
So
it's a balancing act, that's for sure.
It's a big balancing act, and that dynamic between those two people, one who's sort of, I guess, protecting the interests of the club, and one who is protecting the interests of the first team immediately on Saturday, is such an important part of modern football and how it all works. With Saliba, like the thing that gives me hope is I remember when, and I'm sure many listeners remember, I was convinced he wouldn't come back to Arsenal. Really felt that strongly. And when he did, speaking to people close to him, the thing that they really emphasised was he didn't want Arsenal to be like a black mark on his CV. Like he didn't want a failure on his CV. And part of me thinks that, or hopes, shall we say, that mentality of I don't want to walk away without having achieved what I set out to will extend to him winning something big with Arsenal.
Hopefully.
So, I don't know if I would see him walking away before that happens. But let's see. I mean, it's a hugely important issue for Arsenal, obviously not just with Saliba, but with Saka and a couple of others you mentioned who've also got contract situations. And I think they need to attack them aggressively. And I think in order to do that, they need to accelerate the sporting director appointment process and get it done. I think I've written elsewhere that February is an important time, and there's going to be meetings and interviews and all sorts of things. Now the window is shut. Save your jokes. And I guess we'll find out more soon.
I think, did you report, I remember reading it somewhere, that Arsenal were interested in that defender that Man City signed from Brazil?
Yeah.
Vitor Reis or Rice. I mean,
it's actually pronounced with like a J or something mad because it's Brazilian. But and Arsenal loved him. 18 years old. We had scouts on the ground watching him at games. We had a representative at a match in November, and Real Madrid also really liked him. And in around November, December time, Madrid were saying, we've lost the player. He's going to Arsenal. Now, obviously, a few things happen then. Edu leaves. Maybe that has a bit of a knock-on effect. He would have been heavily involved in that. But I think principally the main issue was they kind of decided we might need this money for other parts of the pitch or other parts of the squad. Have that turn out. And City step in and sign him. And I think even though Arsenal had made that choice, there was still a bit of frustration because they saw him as someone who could mitigate maybe against the loss of somebody like Saliba down the line. You know,
yeah.
It was a Saliba-like signing, an
Sure.
18-year-old centre-half for about 30 million quid who had all the basic tools and might be a star. I have to say, like, Saliba has exceeded reasonable expectations for a signing like that, I think.
Yeah.
You know, it comes from an era where Arsenal didn't get a lot right, and they really did get one right with him.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right, well, look, we'll wait and see how that all plays out. As we said, a very cheery start to part 2. So do you have anything to follow that up with?
Yeah, come on then. Well, how about this? Master Johnbury. They've got 2 questions. Let's go for this one. With our powder now officially dry, suppose I gave you 120 million to spend on attacking players this summer. Would you rather we spent all of it on a truly transformative player like Isak, or split it into 2 signings around 55 to 65 million that are slightly less sure things like Sesko and Williams?
Oh, I think what would make more sense is the latter option, right? Where not only do we need to add quality up front, we need to add numbers. We need to add some depth because Sterling will be gone. Trossard will be a little closer to the end of his career and he's got a year left on his contract. Gabriel Jesus, you know, we're not going to see him anyway until much later this year if we see him back that soon. So we need numbers. You know, we need numbers. Would I prefer the former over the latter? Probably. It's just because I think, like everybody listening to this, you can absolutely, without trying too hard, visualize Alexander Isak in red and white scoring the goals that he scores. You can just see it. It feels like it fits. And look, he's got a contract at Newcastle and they're going to look for a huge amount of money for him, as they should. So I think what I would prefer is the former. What I think we will do and should do is probably the latter. What do you think?
I mean, it sounds absurd, but then it's not my money, is it? I think if you can get Alexander Isak for 120 million, I think you have to do it. I know that sounds mental because it's so much money, and add the salary on top. What would that be? Like 20 million a year or something absurd. But it's a bit like Declan Rice, where you're buying a player who is Premier League certified. You know? I know there's always that kind of alchemy of a transfer and anything can happen. But it's as close to a sure thing as I can imagine.
Yeah.
I don't think that will be possible. That's my opinion.
What, the transfer itself, or just 120 million, or would you have to pay more for it? I mean,
yeah. Well, I'm not sure we could pay that, or would pay it, shall we say? And I'm not sure Newcastle would do it. I know that might sound, again, quite mad, but you can't really overestimate how important he is to them, not just on the pitch, but sort of symbolically. This is a city that kind of idolises its centre forwards, and he is the centre of that entire club.
Yeah, he could, follow in Alan Shearer's footsteps and stay there for a long time and win fuck all.
True. But they would, like West Ham with Rice, probably be much happier seeing him go abroad, or, you know what I mean? Like somewhere where he's not going to bother them ever again. Whereas, I don't think it's realistic. But if it was, if Newcastle said, by the way, you can have him for this, I'd be scrabbling down the back of every seat in the director's box at Arsenal to try and get that money together. But if it's not possible for him, there's no one else in that price bracket that I think is right. Like, I don't think the answer is then to just go, well, we'll find another 100 million plus centre forward.
No,
I think he's pretty unique in what he offers, particularly in terms of sort of what he's demonstrated at Premier League level already.
Yeah.
And I also think there's a bit of a lesson in him, surely. I mean, if you're thinking about it strategically, Arsenal could have signed this player. Now, there were reasons they didn't, but they could have signed this player when he was 22 at Sociedad for half that price. They didn't do that. And look at him now. So should you, rather than breaking the bank and probably preventing yourself doing any other kind of business in the summer.
That's the other aspect of it, isn't it? There is that,
instead of doing that, do you say, well, let's get the next guy off the conveyor belt? And that is always a gamble, though.
No, it sure is. Sure is.
I don't know. But yeah, the sort of fan part of me is like, if you can get Isaac, you get him. But I don't think we can.
So well then you go somewhere else, and
and Sesko is one that's like, there's no certainty about that. We don't really know. I certainly don't really know how good he is or how good he can become. But there are definitely people at Arsenal that think he can become top level. So do you say, well, we'll do that then, and trust in our coaching environment and our development to make him an Isaac level player?
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Yeah,
that's a big ask.
But what I would say is, in the final season that Isaac had at Sociedad, he played 33 La Liga games, I think, and scored 6 goals. So no one. I mean, I liked him, and lots of people liked him, but no one was looking at him and saying, well, "This is the new Thierry Henry." You know what I mean? So
I think people could see that there was obviously a really good player there.
Yeah.
But I guess if the numbers were unconvincing for everybody bar Newcastle,
And what did Mikel Arteta want to do, if you remember? So we were looking in January for a striker. We ended up not doing one. Sound familiar? And we waited till the summer. We waited for Gabriel Jesus, who was a Premier League established player.
Yeah.
And Declan Rice, another big tentpole signing for Mikel Arteta, Premier League established player. He's got a type. He likes players who've demonstrated. Ollie Watkins.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a question that I've not seen that I would ask you is, do you think there's a world where Arsenal go back to Ollie Watkins if they can't get an Isak, for example?
I wouldn't say it's impossible by any means, because if he's a player we like now, I'm sure we'll like him in the summer if the price is right in the summer. Then I don't
might come down a little bit. Right? 6 months less on the contract, 6 months older.
But I think he always felt in January anyway like a real now signing, like now.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have more time to think and plan and strategize and do the groundwork on a different kind of player, I mean, I think that interest, as you reported, was essentially driven by the fact Villa were falling foul of PSR rules and they had to sell one of Watkins or Johan Duran. As it turned out, they sold the latter, but the sort of availability / interest in Watkins was down to that, rather than him being a player that, let's say, when the clock ticked on January 1st and we started thinking about transfers, because that's obviously when we did it, you know, they said, right, Ollie Watkins, let's go all out and get that guy. That's not how it was happening.
No,
you know?
for sure. But, you know, I can imagine a debate at Arsenal if Isak proves out of reach. I can imagine, you know, one big dossier file that says Benjamin Sesko and another one that says Ollie Watkins. And if you're Mikel Arteta and you're thinking, well, I might only have 12 more months of Saliba. I need to win something in the next 2 years.
Go get me Chris Samba. I know what you mean.
Well, you know what I mean, though. I can imagine maybe him making the case for a an immediate impact signing rather than a development project.
Yeah.
So I don't rule Watkins out at this point. I think, you know, I think it will still be a discussion in the summer. But, you know, I always think back to January, whatever it was, the January we tried to sign Moises Caicedo. And I remember, like, you know, that didn't happen in the end. And in the weeks afterwards, there were a few stories like, well, Arsenal could still do both. You know, they hope to do both. And I was like, well, that's just keeping your options warm, right? That's good, sensible management from a club to be like, no, we like you. We'll be back. But obviously they very much went back for one and not for the other. And it'll be the same with the strikers, you would think.
All right, what about this question from Soul on the Discord? He says, morning, guys. Has the banter, hate watch, Mickey-taking era got out of hand? It seems every programme or radio show is now centred around winding people up, tribalism, and getting one up on others. It makes society more unkind and the majority of sensible debate focusing on the good things by the winners, a background activity which is rarely highlighted.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because the cynical part of me wants to say, I guess the numbers probably speak for themselves. Like, I may not like it, and I may feel like it's kind of lowest common denominator stuff, but one presumes these media companies are led by figures. So they probably feel like they probably have demonstrable proof this is working.
Yeah.
Now, does it mean the alternative wouldn't work better? Not necessarily, but that's kind of my concern. Like, it may have gone too far for some of our tastes, but I don't know. The way our whole lives now seem to be essentially dictated by algorithms, I feel like the algorithm kind of wins, even if it does play to some of our more base traits.
Yeah, it's sort of like the Jerry Springerification of football in a way. Do you know what I mean?
It's fast food kind of thing.
It is, yeah. And look, it's a sort of thing that has developed as an entertainment part of football. As football has grown to be more aligned with entertainment than sport or business or whatever you want to say, I think the offshoot of that is, you know, other aspects, which, you know, we're all free to choose to watch or not watch or turn off or anything else. But I do think, you know, we're part of the machine, if you like, a specific part, or, you know, we do what we do and other people do what they do. I do worry sometimes a bit about, like, maybe it's my age, and I'll fully admit that, but, like, I just don't get grown men who are fans of one football team sitting there watching another football team streaming themselves live. You know, I understand why they do it, right? Because it's financially beneficial. I do get that. Yeah. But I don't understand the willingness to put yourself out there and make a fucking complete dickhead of yourself forever. You know, because this stuff lasts forever. So they're watching Arsenal and they're like, ha ha, Arsenal have conceded a goal, ha ha ha. And then, you know, we end up winning 5-1 and they're like, well, you know, they're having, you know, that sort of stuff aligned with, let's say, you know, I do worry about at times what the impact is of, let's say you're a fan of Liverpool or Man City or Arsenal, whatever, and there's a guy who's a fan of your club and they're streaming themselves and they're watching, and the reaction to everything is sort of rooted in absolute rage. Do you know what I mean? I worry about how that will impact the way a generation of people are going to grow up and thinking about football and thinking about the game. Because they'll say, oh, it's authentic. It's just authentic in the moment reaction. But I think we all understand as well that it is quite performative and driven by the need to generate these little clips that do the rounds and go viral and all that kind of stuff. But I worry a little bit about that. Again, could be my age, and, you know, if that's what it is, I'm an old cunt and ignore everything I've got to say. But I do have some concern about that in the noise, the actual good stuff, if you want to call it that, the proper analysis, because there's a lot of really smart people out there who've got good opinions on football, who write well, who talk well, who can do the video stuff. There's this guy, James from Gunnerblog, does these videos. I think he had a question earlier. You know, that kind of stuff gets a bit lost in the noise of what people crave from an entertainment perspective.
That is fair. But equally, whatever this landscape is, it's a landscape that affords, you know, you and I and this show to exist.
Yeah.
Maybe not in the scale of, you know, TalkSport or Sky Sports or anything like that. But, you know, we have a place within it. And actually, like, if you want this content, it's more accessible to you than ever. And it's flourishing more than ever. There's never been a better time to be someone who writes or makes videos or does podcasts about football. It's just, you know, it's very, very rich at this point in time. I do think, as you were talking, something that occurred to me that's slightly odd is I do sometimes feel like the mainstream coverage. I mean, we Arseblog, forgive me sort of talking on your behalf, but like was set up as like a very clearly an independent fan voice. And you would think that the mainstream coverage would be considered neutral, analytical, and the fan coverage would just be kind of emotionally led, also like bias, basically. And we do that, don't get me wrong. There's plenty of that. But I do think that, like, what's striking now is when you look at a lot of the fan coverage, it does sometimes feel like the debate is more nuanced or more sensitive or more thoughtful than what you get in the mainstream.
Well, I think what's happened, let's say, with Miles Lewis-Skelly over the last week is a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
Where on Arsenal podcasts and, you know, I've seen articles and I've seen people talk about it and elsewhere.
A great column.
Yeah, exactly. And Phil did a good podcast with Tayo as well that people should check out as well. You know, the consideration given to that topic by, and I have to say as well, I've seen non-Arsenal fans actually make very good points about the Lewis Skelly stuff and the media coverage, and you know the fact that it has been in many ways rooted in a kind of a racism, whether it's structural or institutionalized or whatever you want to call it, it's absolutely been there, and those people have called it out for what it is, and I think that's important and right to do so. But within the mainstream media itself, there isn't either the self-awareness or the ability to look at that from an objective point of view, because you're having to look inside to see where the problem lies, you know? So I think, you know, with what I said earlier about, you know, types of content, I'm not saying it shouldn't exist or anything like that. I think it's got every right to exist, and we all have freedom of choice to consume what it is that we want to consume. But I think you're right that the fan element of football coverage has seeped so far into the what you might call the traditional media landscape. So previously, do you know what I mean? Like previously,
it feels like it's almost flipped in some way.
Yeah. So like Neville is a Man United fan, and he's a Man United fan openly, and Carragher's a Liverpool fan, he's a Liverpool fan openly, and Roy Keane, you know, is a Man United fan. We have Ian Wright doing some of it as well, who's obviously an Arsenal fan, and we love that about what he does. But I think those roles within the traditional media were much more neutral years ago, you know, and they're not anymore. And I'm not saying it's good, bad, or indifferent, but it is different, you know.
Yeah, and on the sort of Lewis Skelly point, I only mention it because I think it touches on the theme we're talking about more generally. For me, like, an individual writer or a journalist, whatever, may say, well, I know I'm not a racist, or whatever it is, you know, but that is not the nature of what we're talking about here. We're talking about a degree of sort of inherent prejudice or bias. It may be conscious, it may be unconscious. The point is, I think if you're in a position of power, and frankly, if you've got the ability to publish work that reaches very many people, that is a kind of power. It needs to be offset with a great deal of responsibility. And I feel like whatever your view, you know, whether you're a racist or not, whether you think Miles Lewis Skelly was within his rights or whether you don't, you have to take some responsibility in how you tell that story and how you portray that young man. And that's what staggers me really, is that people don't recognize that.
Well, yeah,
like, I mean, like in a way, whether or not someone's racist is, you know, arguably we're all prejudiced or have biases that we're not aware of to a certain extent. That's less interesting to me and less alarming. What's most alarming to me is like to not think about the consequences of what you're doing, or, you know, to be fully aware of the consequences but still go ahead and do it and say what you say, or choose the words that you choose. Like, I think I shared a little screenshot of this, and I realize, you know, it is the Daily Mail and they have a lot of form for this kind of stuff, but they wheel out Graham Souness like a week after the Lewis Skelly thing has happened, actually, 10 days after the sending off, and then the goal and the celebration against Man City, and so many articles and column inches and stories and criticisms and defenses and all that kind of stuff. And they still feel like it's okay for Graham Souness to say Miles Lewis Skelly needs to wind his neck in. The language, and this goes completely to the point that Tim made in his article, right? It's the language that you use and how you frame those arguments, whatever you might think of it. Think about the words that you use there. Like, that is so aggressive, isn't it? Like, wind your neck in is what you say when you're about to fight someone. That's what I mean. And that's when I say, like, it's not really good enough to say, well, I didn't do it with any malice or any intent. It's like, well, that's not enough, I'm afraid. You have to think about the consequences. You have to think about how those words might be interpreted by other people, the influence they might have on other people. Mm-hmm. You have to think about how they affect the portrayal of Miles. I think it's sort of self-evident that And I think that maybe the reason I've gone on this sort of tangent is simply to say that I do wish that broadcasters in general showed a lot more responsibility in terms of the coverage that they put out. I feel like there is this kind of race to the bottom to some extent.
Yeah.
And as I said, it appeals to some of our more base instincts. So yeah, not ideal.
Not ideal.
And yeah, as for Miles, I mean, yeah. The one thing that gives me great comfort is that from the very little we know about Miles Lewis-Skelly, I genuinely believe he will, as an individual, he will be able to brush this off.
Yeah, I mean, the wider discussion is like, should he have to brush this off? Is this something that he should be dealing with at 18 years of age in 2025? No, is the answer. But we are where we are. And I think, as you well know, in all aspects, I think Miles is in good hands, on the pitch, at the club and off the pitch. And, I'm confident that something like this, which, has to affect you in some way, regardless of what sort of personality you have or how strong a character you have. You think about yourself at 18 years of age and being put in that kind of spotlight. You might relish it. You might, you might embrace that because of the kind of personality you have. If you're willing to do that celebration, it shows you've got a big character and a big personality. But at the same time, you're 18 years of age and there are going to be things said about you that you might read or not read. And, who knows what kind of cunts were fucking trying to get into his DMs or whatever on Instagram if he's on there.
I'm sure.
That kind of stuff is difficult to deal with. But he does have good people around him in all aspects of his life. So, that is a good thing.
Yeah, that's provides some relief at least. But it's a very interesting area and will continue to be, I think, as the race to the bottom kind of continues.
Yes. What about this one? Just to finish us off, I think, because we've gone a bit. Tristan says, he's on the Discord, is it just me, or does it feel like nearly every team has a point to prove when they play against us? Every week it seems the opposition give an extra 20% because they see us as rivals. For example, Villa, Newcastle, West Ham. It doesn't seem to be the case for our title rivals. Have we antagonised teams unwillingly, and is there anything we can do to stop this? Do you think that's a real thing, or is that something we kind of have in our own heads? Is it like an online thing more than a real life thing? I kind of know where he's coming from on this.
I'm trying to think. It's not something I'm massively aware of, but I feel like, is that just us? If it does exist, is it just us creating narratives? You know what I mean? Go on. What do you think?
I don't know. I do feel like we're the sort of team that everyone loves to hate in a way, and have a bit of history with that, From Wenger's years. I think it's a little bit of a hangover from that. I think this is something that you've spoken about before, is that maybe Mikel Arteta is not the most popular guy among opposition fans. I was with my brother yesterday. I know he has strong feelings on Mikel Arteta. It was quite funny. It was quite funny that when the Miles Lewis-Skelly sending off happened and Arteta, I can't remember what it was he said, but he completely played it down, didn't he, in the press conference? We talked about that. And then there were the reported threats to Michael Oliver, and Arteta was asked about them in his next press conference. And he said, we have to respect the referees or whatever. I can't remember. But, he obviously condemned any threats towards any officials. And my brother was like, a bit rich coming from Arteta, isn't it? And I was like, since that thing he said after the Newcastle game, he's never said a word against referees since. He rolled back on that as well, I think, after the comments and after he got away with the disgracia, and, we got Lionel Hutt's attorney at law to get him off on those charges. I think he's been pretty clear, we we talk about referees because we want to improve the standards, not just for Arsenal, for everybody. It's a conversation everybody in the Premier League should be having. And I think he's been quite, if benign is the right word, I think he's been pretty straight, respect the referees. He hasn't done anything since then to disrespect referees in any way. But that one incident makes everybody think, from the outside, he's going on and on about referees all the time, like he's the worst in the world when it comes to referees. The perception versus the reality, like I get why they think that to an extent, but the reality is he hasn't said anything bad about referees for going on nearly 2 years now.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And that stuff follows you, and it does. In this case, I mean, that again is the consequence of the way, I suppose, the media landscape is, the sort of memification of people. You are one thing.
I mean, I did say, you had Jurgen Klopp. To which, there's no real comeback. But, this is what I mean. Too. This is what I mean about, how maybe we are perceived among opposition fans in ways that don't 100% reflect the reality of who we are, what we do, and, what we're thought to do anyway.
That's true. And I think as well, if we're going to have this conversation sort of honestly and fairly, I think we have, I would also say, we also have to be conscious that we exist in our own echo chamber, and it's probably in our nature to see Arsenal as prejudiced against, or that is part of being a fan. I'm sure if you asked fans of Liverpool or Chelsea or United, they say, "Oh yeah, everyone hates us, and it's not fair," but they hate us. So I think we've got to have that kind of objectivity to recognise that we play a part in that, and our own sensitivities are an aspect in that. Sure. But I do think, with that said, there are things about Arsenal and things about Arteta that do kind of, I suppose, wind people up a little bit. And that's just the reality. But what would wind them up most would be if we could win something.
Yeah.
So
just win the league and the Champions League.
Just win the league and the Champions League.
What do you want?
You've been to Dubai. What more do you want?
We've told you how to fix all the problems. Just do it.
Get Calafiori on the right wing and win the bloody league, all right?
Yes. I know they're listening. Just make that happen for all of us. For all of us. And then, sign Saliba to a 9-year contract. Runs alongside Haaland so he can just keep him in his pocket for 9 years.
To the day.
All right. Okay. I think we should leave it there. To you guys, thank you so much as always for being here and for listening. Hopefully we have scratched your not an interlull, but still quite interlull adjacent Arsenal itch today. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being with us. And we will catch you on the next one.
Bye-bye.